The auctioneer's gavel was halfway to the table when Madison Brooks realized she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had raised her hand not to make a bid, but to swat away a particularly persistent bee that insisted on circling around her sweaty face. "Sold to the lady in red for $50,000, shouted the auctioneer, his radiant smile contrasting dramatically with the expression of absolute horror on Madison's face. The charity event at the luxurious Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco was packed with the city's elite, women wearing dresses that cost more than Madison made in 6 months, men in tuxedos discussing business between champagne flutes that probably cost more than her monthly grocery bill. Madison felt like a fish out of water in her red department store dress, which she had bought on clearance specifically for tonight. I didn't," Madison stammered, feeling the blood drain completely from her face as hundreds of curious gazes turned toward her. The ornate golden ballroom seemed to spin around her, with its crystal chandeliers twinkling like distant, mocking stars. "Wonderful!" exclaimed an elderly woman with silver hair and a pearl necklace the size of grapes, clapping enthusiastically. Such generosity. Madison looked around desperately, searching for an exit, any exit, when her eyes met those of a man standing near the stage. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with perfectly styled dark brown hair and blue-gray eyes that seemed to analyze her with amused interest. His tuxedo was impeccably tailored, and there was something in his posture that screamed wealth and power, the kind of man who was used to getting everything he wanted. And at this exact moment he was smiling at her with an expression that mixed genuine amusement with something that looked dangerously close to fascination. "Excuse me," Madison murmured to the people around her, trying to squeeze between the golden chairs and elegant guests. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure everyone in the ballroom could hear it. I didn't mean to." But before she could escape, the mysterious man was blocking her path, holding a champagne flute in each hand and that irritatingly confident smile still playing on his lips. "Congratulations on your acquisition," he said, his voice carrying a refined accent that spoke of expensive education and generational privilege. "Though I must admit, it's the first time I've seen someone win a Napa Valley weekend and look ready to throw up." Madison felt her cheeks burn with shame and indignation. "I wasn't making a bid. I was swatting a bee. And now I'm stuck with a $50,000 bill I can't pay for something I don't even want." $50,000 is quite a lot of money, he agreed, extending one of the flutes to her. Especially for someone who clearly doesn't belong in this world. The observation was made without malice, but Madison felt as if she'd been slapped. She looked down at her simple dress, her medium-heeled shoes bought on sale, and then at him, all polished and perfect as if he'd stepped out of the pages of a business magazine. "You're right," she said, straightening her shoulders with a dignity she didn't know she possessed. "I don't belong here. I came because my boss insisted, thinking it would be good for networking. Apparently the only thing I networked my way into was bankruptcy." His smile softened, becoming more genuine. "What's your name?" "Madison Brooks. And before you ask, yes, I work as an administrative assistant at a small marketing company. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in Oakland that shares walls with neighbors who love loud music, and I definitely don't have $50,000 saved up for extravagant Napa Valley weekends." "Interesting," he murmured, and Madison couldn't decide if he was being sincere or sarcastic. "I'm Cameron Westfield." The name hit Madison like lightning. Cameron Westfield. The Cameron Westfield of Westfield Technologies, whose face appeared regularly in Forbes and whose fortune was measured in billions, not millions. She had just unloaded all her financial frustrations on the richest man in San Francisco. "Oh, God," she whispered, feeling even more nauseous. You're that Cameron Westfield." "Guilty as charged," he said with a casual shrug, as if being a billionaire was a minor detail. "And now that we've established our respective positions in the social hierarchy, how about we discuss your situation?" "My situation is that I'm officially broke," Madison said, feeling tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "I'll have to sell everything I own, which isn't much, and I'll probably still owe money." Cameron studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. There was something about the intensity of his gaze that made Madison feel as if he could see through all her defenses, read every insecurity and every dream she kept hidden. "What if I made you a proposition?" he said finally. Madison laughed bitterly. "Unless your proposition involves a time machine to go back 5 minutes, I'm not interested." Actually, it involves something much simpler. Cameron stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I'll pay the $50,000. Madison blinked, sure she had misheard. "What?" "I'll cover your debt. Completely. No interest, no conditions, no need for repayment." "Why would you do that?" Madison asked suspiciously. In her experience, rich men like Cameron Westfield didn't do anything without expecting something in return. "What do you want from me?" Cameron smiled, and this time there was something almost predatory in the expression. Not threatening, but definitely calculated. "I want you to have dinner with me." "A $50,000 dinner?" Madison shook her head, taking a step back. "Definitely not." "Thanks, but I'm not that kind of woman." "What kind of woman?" "The kind who accepts money from strangers in exchange for anything." Madison lifted her chin defiantly. "I'm not for sale, Mr. Westfield. Not for $50,000, not for $50 million. To her surprise, Cameron began to laugh. A rich, genuine laugh that made several heads turn in their direction. "You just turned down $50,000 free and clear because you thought I was trying to buy you? Weren't you?" Madison crossed her arms, maintaining her defensive posture despite the heat she felt rising in her cheeks. "Madison Brooks," Cameron said, his eyes sparkling with what seemed like amusement and admiration mixed together. "You are absolutely fascinating. And no, I wasn't trying to buy you. I was trying to save you from an embarrassing situation while arranging an excuse to spend more time with the most interesting woman I've met in years." "Interesting?" Madison repeated, confused. "I literally just made the most expensive accidental bid in charity auction history." "Exactly." Cameron extended his hand to her, like an invitation. "Most of the women in this ballroom have planned every move tonight, from the dress they chose to the conversations they intend to have. You're completely spontaneous, genuine, and you just insulted me to my face after finding out who I am. Do you have any idea how refreshing that is?" Madison looked at the extended hand, then at Cameron's face, searching for signs that he was mocking her. But all she saw was sincerity and an interest that made her feel simultaneously flattered and terrified. "One dinner?" she said slowly. "Just one dinner. And you pay the $50,000. Just one dinner. And I pay the $50,000. Madison took a deep breath, feeling as if she were about to jump off a cliff. "And after that, we're even. You go back to your world of billionaires, I go back to my noisy apartment in Oakland, and we pretend this never happened." Cameron's smile became mysterious. "If that's what you want." There was something in the way he said it that made Madison suspect he didn't believe she would want that. His arrogance should have irritated her, but instead she felt challenged. "Fine," she said, taking his hand. "One dinner." When their fingers touched, Madison felt an electric spark run up her arm. From the expression on Cameron's face, he had felt it too. As he led her through the golden ballroom, past curious guests and speculative glances, Madison couldn't shake the feeling that she had just agreed to much more than a simple dinner. And the most terrifying part was that she was curious to find out exactly what she had just accepted. 3 days later, Madison stood outside Atelier Crenne, one of San Francisco's most exclusive restaurants, checking her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. Cameron had texted her the address with a simple message. "Tonight, 7 p.m., looking forward to our conversation." She'd spent her entire lunch break Googling the restaurant, only to discover that it had a 6-month waiting list and a tasting menu that cost more than her monthly rent. The kind of place where people spoke in hushed tones about molecular gastronomy and wine pairings that cost more per glass than she spent on groceries in a week. "This is insane," she muttered to herself, tugging at the hem of her navy blue dress, the nicest thing she owned that wasn't the red disaster from the auction. "I'm having dinner with a billionaire at a restaurant where they probably charge $50 for 3 asparagus spears arranged artistically on a plate. Actually, it's closer to 75, came a familiar voice behind her. Madison spun around to find Cameron approaching, looking effortlessly elegant in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her car. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and those blue-gray eyes held the same amused warmth she remembered from the auction. "You're late," she said, checking her phone again. "It's 7:03. "Traffic," Cameron replied with a grin. "Though I have to say, watching you pace outside while muttering to yourself was highly entertaining." "Something about asparagus spears?" Madison felt her cheeks flush. "I was just researching. This place is very fancy." "It is," Cameron agreed, offering her his arm. "But I thought you deserved somewhere special for our $50,000 dinner." "Don't call it that," Madison said. But she accepted his arm, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened at the contact. "It makes me sound like an expensive escort." "Trust me, Madison, there's nothing about you that reminds me of an escort." The hostess greeted Cameron by name, of course she did, and led them to a private table overlooking the bay. The restaurant was everything Madison had imagined, dimly lit, with soft jazz playing in the background and servers who moved like dancers between tables set with more silverware than she had in her entire apartment. "This is beautiful," Madison admitted as they were seated looking out at the lights reflecting off the water. "I'm glad you approve," Cameron said, but he wasn't looking at the view. His eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity that made her self-conscious. "So," Madison said, unfolding her napkin with exaggerated care, "what exactly does a billionaire tech mogul talk about over dinner with his charity case of the week?" Cameron's eyebrows rose. "Charity case? Come on," Madison said, meeting his gaze directly. "Let's not pretend this is anything other than what it is. You felt sorry for the pathetic woman who accidentally bid away her life savings, so you're playing Good Samaritan. Very noble of you. Is that really what you think this is?" "What else would it be?" Madison asked, though something in his tone made her stomach flutter with uncertainty. The sommelier appeared to discuss wine pairings, and Madison listened in fascination as Cameron navigated the conversation with obvious expertise. Everything about him spoke of a life lived in luxury, from the way he casually discussed vintages that cost more than she made in a month to the casual confidence with which he moved through this rarefied world. "Tell me about your job," Cameron said once they were alone again. "My job?" Madison laughed. "Trust me, you don't want to hear about my job. I answer phones, schedule meetings, and try to keep my boss from forgetting important appointments. It's not exactly Fortune 500 material. I asked because I'm interested, not because I'm judging." Madison studied his face, looking for signs of condescension or polite boredom, but his expression seemed genuinely curious. "Fine. I work for a small marketing firm called Creative Solutions. We handle local businesses mostly. Restaurants, boutiques, the occasional tech startup that can't afford one of the big agencies. It's not glamorous, but I'm good at it." "What do you like about it?" "I like helping people," Madison said, surprised by the question. "Small business owners especially. They have these dreams, these ideas, and sometimes all they need is someone to help them figure out how to tell their story. It's rewarding." Cameron nodded thoughtfully. "That's not what I expected you to say. What did you expect? Something about job security or paying the bills. Most people in your position would focus on the practical aspects." Madison felt a flicker of irritation. "People in my position? I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." Madison set down her wine glass with perhaps more force than necessary. "Look, I get it. You live in a world where money isn't a concern, where you can drop $50,000 on a whim just to help out some random woman you'll never see again. But for people in my position, we don't have the luxury of pursuing our passions without worrying about rent." Cameron was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the table. "You're right," he said finally. "That was condescending of me. I apologize." The apology caught Madison off guard. She'd expected defensiveness or dismissal, not genuine contrition. "I don't get apologized to very often by billionaires," she said, her tone softening slightly. "Maybe you should spend time with better billionaires." Despite herself, Madison smiled. "I'll keep that in mind for next time." The first course arrived, something that looked more like abstract art than food, and Madison watched in fascination as Cameron explained each element. He was clearly in his element here, comfortable with luxury in a way that seemed as natural as breathing. "Can I ask you something?" Madison said as they waited for the second course. "Shoot. Why aren't you married?" The question popped out before she could stop herself, and she immediately felt her face burn. "Sorry, that's none of my business." "It's fine," Cameron said, though something flickered across his face. The honest answer? "I haven't met anyone who wanted me for the right reasons." "What do you mean?" Cameron was quiet for a moment, swirling his wine glass thoughtfully. "When you have as much money as I do, it becomes difficult to tell whether someone likes you or likes what you can provide for them. Most of the women I've dated have been more interested in the lifestyle than the person." "That must be lonely," Madison said softly. "It is." Cameron met her eyes across the table. "Which is why meeting someone who told me she wasn't for sale was so refreshing." Madison felt her breath catch. There was something in the way he was looking at her that made her pulse race and her palms sweat. This wasn't the polite interest of a wealthy man amusing himself with a charity case. This was something deeper, more intense. "Cameron," she started, but he held up a hand. "I know what you're going to say, that we're from different worlds, that this could never work, that I should stick to dating socialites and heiresses." His smile was self-deprecating. "Trust me, I've had this conversation with myself multiple times over the past 3 days. And what conclusion did you reach?" "That I don't care." Cameron leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "I don't care that you work as an assistant or that you live in Oakland or that you buy your dresses on clearance. What I care about is that you're the first person in years who's talked to me like I'm just a man, not a bank account." Madison's heart was hammering against her ribs. "Cameron, I want to see you again," he said simply. "Not because I feel sorry for you, not because I'm playing some kind of game, but because in 3 days I haven't been able to stop thinking about the woman who turned down $50,000 because she thought I was trying to buy her." The intensity in his voice made Madison's mouth go dry. She'd come here expecting a polite dinner followed by a clean goodbye. She hadn't expected this. The raw honesty, the genuine interest, the way he was looking at her like she was something precious. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Probably," Cameron agreed. "But sometimes the best things in life are a little crazy." Before Madison could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it automatically, then felt her stomach drop as she read the words. "Madison, it's your boss. Emergency at the office. Need you here ASAP. Major client crisis." "I have to go," she said, standing abruptly. "Work emergency." Cameron's face fell. "At 9 o'clock at night? Small company, big problems," Madison said, grabbing her purse. "I'm sorry. I know this looks like I'm running away, but I really do have to." "Let me drive you," Cameron said, signaling for the check. "You don't have to." "Madison." Cameron stood, moving around the table to face her. "Let me drive you." The simple request, spoken in that low, earnest voice, made something flutter in her chest. Against her better judgment, she nodded. As they left the restaurant together, Madison couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at a crossroads. Behind her lay her safe, predictable life of carefully managed finances and modest dreams. Ahead of her lay something uncertain and terrifying and utterly seductive. The question was, which path was she brave enough to take? Cameron's Tesla pulled up to the modest office building in Soma, where Creative Solutions occupied the 3rd floor, and Madison felt the familiar pang of embarrassment at the contrast. The building was clean but aging, with fluorescent lights visible through windows and the kind of practical architecture that screamed, budget-conscious small business. "This is it," Madison said, unbuckling her seatbelt. "Thank you for the ride. And dinner. And saving my financial life." "Madison." Cameron's hand covered hers before she could reach for the door handle. "About what I said at dinner." "You don't have to explain anything," Madison said quickly. "We both got caught up in the moment. Good wine, romantic setting, it happens." "That's not what happened." The certainty in his voice made her look at him, Really look at him. Even in the dim light from the street lamps, she could see the intensity in his eyes, the way his jaw was set with determination. Cameron, we both know this is insane, she said softly. You're you, and I'm me. We don't make sense. Since when do the best things in life make sense? Before Madison could answer, her phone rang again. She glanced at the screen and sighed. It's my boss. I really have to go. Go, Cameron said, but he didn't release her hand. But Madison, this conversation isn't over. The elevator ride to the third floor felt like the longest of Madison's life. Her hand still tingled where Cameron had touched it, and she could still smell his cologne on her dress. She was so distracted that she almost walked into the glass door of Creative Solutions before remembering to use her keycard. Madison, thank God you're here. Her boss, Janet Murphy, appeared from the conference room looking frazzled. Her usually perfect blonde bob was disheveled, and there were stress lines around her eyes that Madison had never seen before. What's the emergency? Madison asked, dropping her purse at her desk and immediately switching into work mode. The Hartwell Industries account, Janet said, and Madison felt her stomach drop. They're pulling out, effective immediately. What? But that's our biggest client. They represent almost 40% of our revenue. I know. Janet ran her hands through her hair, making it even more chaotic. Their representative called an hour ago, said they're consolidating all their marketing efforts with a larger agency. Something about aligning with companies that better reflect their scale and vision. Madison sank into her desk chair, her mind racing. Hartwell Industries had been Creative Solutions' anchor client for 3 years. Without them, the company would have to lay off at least half the staff, possibly more. Did they give any other reason? Madison asked, though she was already dreading the answer. Just corporate speak about strategic realignment, Janet said bitterly. 24 hours notice to wrap up all ongoing projects and transfer files. It's completely unprofessional, but what can we do? We can't exactly sue Hartwell Industries. Madison stared at her computer screen, but she wasn't seeing the emails piling up in her inbox. She was thinking about Cameron's last name, Westfield. She was thinking about dinner conversation where he'd mentioned knowing other tech companies. She was thinking about how naive she'd been to believe that a billionaire would be interested in her for purely personal reasons. Madison? Janet's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Madison lied, forcing herself to focus. What do you need me to do? The next 3 hours passed in a blur of damage control. Madison worked through client files, updated project statuses, and helped Janet draft emails to the remaining clients, assuring them that Creative Solutions would continue to provide excellent service, despite the loss of a major account. It was past midnight when Janet finally sent the skeleton crew home, promising to meet again in the morning to discuss next steps. Madison waited until the office was empty before allowing herself to fall apart. She sat at her desk in the dark, staring at her phone. Part of her wanted to call Cameron immediately, to demand an explanation, but a larger part of her was afraid of what he might say, or worse, what he might not say. Her phone buzzed with a text message. I hope everything worked out at the office. Sleep well. Cameron. Madison stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Did you know? Her phone rang immediately. Madison, what are you talking about? Hartwell Industries, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Did you know they were planning to drop Creative Solutions when you asked me to dinner? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Cameron finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. How did you find out about Hartwell? So you did know? Madison felt something cold settle in her stomach. This whole thing, the dinner, the interest, all of it, was what? Guilt? Some kind of elaborate apology? Madison, it's not what you think. Then explain it to me, Madison said, standing up and beginning to pace around her dark office. Explain how the man I had dinner with tonight somehow failed to mention that his company just destroyed my employer. Hartwell Industries isn't my company, Cameron said. It's run by my cousin Derek. I have a small stake in it, but I don't make operational decisions. But you knew. Another pause. Derek mentioned they were restructuring their marketing spend. I didn't know it would affect your company specifically until after we'd already made plans for dinner. Madison closed her eyes, feeling foolish and naive and angry all at once. And you didn't think to mention it, even when I was telling you how much I loved my job? I was hoping Derek would reconsider. I thought if I talked to him, you thought you'd fix it for me? Madison's voice rose. Like some kind of white knight riding in to save the poor little assistant? That's not how I see you. Isn't it? Madison laughed bitterly. The whole evening makes so much more sense now. The expensive restaurant, the personal questions, the convenient revelation about wanting to see me again. You felt guilty about your cousin's business decision, so you decided to play hero. Madison, you're wrong. Yes, I found out about Hartwell after we'd already made plans, and yes, I should have told you. But that has nothing to do with why I want to see you again. I don't believe you. The words hung in the air between them, final and cutting. Madison could hear Cameron's breathing on the other end of the line, could almost feel his frustration through the phone. I can fix this, he said finally. I can talk to Derek, make him reconsider. No. Madison's voice was sharp. Don't you dare. Don't you dare try to fix my life because you feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for you. What? You what, Cameron? You love me? After one dinner? Madison shook her head even though he couldn't see her. We don't even know each other. Then let me get to know you. Let me prove that this isn't about guilt or pity or... I can't. Madison sank back into her chair, suddenly exhausted. I can't do this. I can't be your charity case or your project or whatever this is. I have to focus on finding a new job now thanks to your cousin's strategic realignment. Madison, please. Goodbye, Cameron. Madison hung up before he could respond, then immediately turned off her phone. She sat in the dark office for another hour, staring out at the city lights and trying to process everything that had happened. 3 days ago, she'd been a nobody struggling to make ends meet. Then she'd accidentally bid $50,000 she didn't have, met a billionaire who seemed genuinely interested in her, had the most romantic dinner of her life, and discovered that it might all have been an elaborate guilt trip. Her phone buzzed with notifications when she finally turned it back on. Missed calls from Cameron, text messages that she deleted without reading. She couldn't deal with his explanations or apologies right now. She needed time to think, to figure out how to separate her wounded pride from whatever she'd started to feel for him. As she finally gathered her things to leave the office, Madison caught sight of her reflection in the dark window. She looked tired, disheveled, and older than her 28 years. This was her reality: late nights at a struggling company, clothes bought on sale, an uncertain future that didn't include fairy tale romances with billionaires. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, carrying her down to the lobby and back to her real life. Whatever had been building between her and Cameron Westfield was over before it had really begun. Some things were just too good to be true. 2 weeks later, Madison was elbow-deep in job applications when her coworker Sarah burst into the break room, with the kind of manic energy that usually meant either very good news or complete disaster. "You need to see this," Sarah said, grabbing Madison's arm and practically dragging her to the window that overlooked the street below. "Sarah, I'm really not in the mood for whatever." Madison's words died in her throat as she looked down at the scene unfolding 3 stories below. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, all staring up at a massive billboard truck parked directly in front of their building. The digital display showed Madison's face, a candid photo that must have been taken at the charity auction, along with text that scrolled in bold letters. "Madison Brooks, I'm sorry, give me a chance to explain. Cameron." "Oh my God," Madison whispered, her face burning with embarrassment and something that might have been fury. "He did not just..." "There's more," Sarah said gleefully, pointing to the street. "Look." A second truck was pulling up, this one displaying a different message. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to know the woman who told a billionaire she wasn't for sale." Madison stared in horror as a third truck joined the convoy, its message reading, Dinner was real, my feelings are real, please let me prove it. Is that? Janet appeared beside them, her mouth hanging open. Is that Cameron Westfield publicly begging you for forgiveness? I'm going to kill him, Madison muttered, watching as more people stopped to take photos of the spectacle. I'm going to absolutely murder him. Her phone started ringing, reporters probably who'd gotten wind of the story. Madison's personal life was about to become public entertainment, all because Cameron Westfield thought money could solve everything. I have to get out of here, Madison said, grabbing her purse and heading for the elevator. Where are you going? Janet called after her. To commit a felony. The elevator ride down felt like an eternity. Madison's mind raced between mortification and rage. How dare he? How dare he turn her private pain into a public spectacle? This was exactly what she'd been afraid of, being turned into Cameron Westfield's latest acquisition, his pet project, his charity case displayed for all the world to see. The lobby was chaos. Someone, probably Cameron, had arranged for a string quartet to set up near the entrance, playing what sounded like a classical arrangement of Can't Buy Me Love. Madison almost laughed at the irony if she hadn't been so furious. She pushed through the crowd of onlookers and found Cameron standing beside the first truck, looking impeccable as always in a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. He was holding a ridiculous bouquet of white roses, at least 3 dozen of them, and wearing an expression of hopeful determination that made her want to throw something at his perfect face. Madison! He spotted her immediately and started walking toward her, the crowd parting like he was royalty. I was hoping you'd come down. Are you insane? Madison hissed, acutely aware of all the phone cameras pointed in their direction. What is this? It's an apology, Cameron said, offering her the roses. And a grand gesture. It's a humiliation. Madison knocked the flowers aside, sending white petals scattering across the sidewalk. You turned my life into a circus. I turned my feelings into a public declaration, Cameron corrected, stepping closer. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Madison could feel her control slipping, all the hurt and confusion of the past 2 weeks boiling over. You did exactly what I was afraid you'd do. You made me into a thing, a problem to be solved with money and spectacle and grand gestures. That's not what this is. Then what is it, Cameron? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a billionaire who's used to getting whatever he wants throwing a public tantrum because someone said no to him. Cameron flinched as if she'd slapped him. Is that really what you think of me? I don't know what to think of you. Madison's voice cracked, and she hated herself for showing weakness in front of all these strangers. I don't know if you're genuinely interested in me or if I'm just your latest charity project. I don't know if dinner was real or if you were just feeling guilty about your cousin's business decision. And now I'll never know because you've turned whatever this was into a public relations stunt. The crowd had grown larger, with people recording everything on their phones. Madison could already imagine the headlines. Billionaire's public apology to mystery woman, or the real-life pretty woman says no to tech mogul. You want to know if it was real? Cameron asked, his voice dropping low enough that only she could hear him over the noise of the crowd and the string quartet. You want proof that this isn't about guilt or charity or any other reason except that I can't stop thinking about you? Cameron, don't. But he was already moving, stepping back and addressing the crowd that had gathered. Excuse me, everyone. I need to tell this woman something important. Cameron, no, Madison whispered, but he wasn't listening. 2 weeks ago, I met Madison Brooks at a charity auction, Cameron said, his voice carrying clearly in the afternoon air. She accidentally bid $50,000 on something she couldn't afford, and I offered to help her out. That's the truth. I did feel sorry for her situation. Madison closed her eyes, feeling her worst fears confirmed in front of an audience of strangers. But what happened next, Cameron continued, had nothing to do with pity. Madison told me she wasn't for sale. She looked me in the eye. Me, someone she'd never met, someone who could have solved all her financial problems, and told me she had too much self-respect to be bought. Madison opened her eyes, startled by the genuine emotion in his voice. Do you know how rare that is? Cameron asked, and now he was looking directly at her. Do you know how long it's been since someone saw me as just a man instead of a bank account? Madison Brooks, you are the most genuine, principled, fascinating woman I've ever met. And yes, I should have told you about the Hartwell situation immediately. Yes, I handled everything wrong. But my feelings for you have nothing to do with guilt, and everything to do with the fact that you're the only person who's ever made me want to be worthy of them. The crowd had gone completely silent. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. Madison stood frozen, torn between wanting to run away and wanting to believe every word he was saying. "This is crazy," she whispered. "I know," Cameron said, stepping closer. "I know this is crazy and dramatic and completely over the top. I know you probably hate me right now. But Madison, I'd rather have you hate me for fighting for you than lose you because I was too proud to admit I was wrong." Madison looked around at all the faces watching them, at the phones recording what was probably going to be viral by evening, at the ridiculous billboard trucks and the scattered rose petals and the string quartet holding their instruments in suspended animation. "You hired a string quartet," she said weakly. "They're very good," Cameron said hopefully. "And 3 billboard trucks. I wanted to make sure you got the message." "Cameron," Madison said slowly, "this is the most ridiculous, over-the-top, embarrassing thing anyone has ever done for me." Cameron's face fell. "I know. I'm sorry. I just didn't know how else to—" "I'm not finished," Madison interrupted. "It's also the most romantic thing anyone has ever done for me." Cameron blinked. "It is?" Madison looked at him, really looked at him, past the expensive suit and the perfect hair and the billion-dollar confidence. What she saw was a man who was genuinely terrified that he'd lost something precious, someone who was willing to look foolish in public if it meant having a chance to make things right. "You hired a string quartet to play Can't Buy Me Love," she said, fighting back a smile. "I thought it was thematically appropriate." "It's terrible." "The song or the arrangement?" "Both." Madison took a step closer to him. "Cameron, I'm still angry with you. You should have told me about Hartwell Industries from the beginning." "I know, I'm sorry. And this whole spectacle is completely insane. I know that too. And I still don't know if we make any sense together." Cameron's smile was tentative but hopeful. "So what do you want to do about it?" Madison looked around at the crowd of expectant faces, at the billboard trucks still scrolling their messages of apology, at the string quartet waiting to see if they should pack up or play an encore. She thought about her pride, her fears, her very reasonable concerns about getting involved with someone from a completely different world. Then she thought about the look in Cameron's eyes when he'd told her she wasn't for sale, about the way he'd listened to her talk about her job with genuine interest, about the fact that he was standing in the middle of a busy San Francisco street looking completely ridiculous because he didn't want to lose her. "I want you to dismiss the trucks," she said. Cameron's face fell. "Of course, and send the string quartet home. Right away." "And then," Madison said, stepping close enough to reach up and straighten his tie, "I want you to take me to dinner. Somewhere normal this time, somewhere we can talk without an audience." Cameron's smile could have powered the entire city. "Really?" "Really, but Cameron." "Yes?" Madison rose up on her toes and kissed him softly, ignoring the cheers and applause from the crowd around them. When she pulled back, she whispered, "Next time you want to apologize, try flowers and a phone call first." "Noted," Cameron said, wrapping his arms around her. "Though I have to say this got much better results." As the billboard trucks drove away and the string quartet packed up their instruments, Madison realized that sometimes the most ridiculous gestures came from the most genuine places. And sometimes, just sometimes, it was worth taking a chance on crazy, even if it came with a side of public humiliation and a very expensive string quartet. 3 weeks after the great billboard truck incident, as Sarah had dubbed it, Madison was beginning to understand what dating Cameron Westfield actually meant in practice. It meant paparazzi photos of her buying groceries at Safeway with headlines like, "Tech billionaires' girlfriend shops like us." It meant her LinkedIn profile getting 10,000 views in a single day. It meant her mother calling from Phoenix to ask if she was being careful with that rich boy. Most surprisingly, it meant discovering that Cameron Westfield was actually terrible at dating. "You hired a sommelier," Madison said, staring at the wine expert who was setting up an elaborate tasting station in her tiny Oakland apartment. "For pizza night." "I wanted to make sure we had proper wine pairings," Cameron said, looking genuinely confused by her expression. "You said you liked the wine at Atelier Cren." "Cameron." Madison took his hands and led him away from where the sommelier was arranging glasses with scientific precision. "We're eating pepperoni pizza from Tony's and watching Netflix. The wine pairing is supposed to be whatever's on sale at the corner store. But I wanted it to be special. It is special. Because we're together." Madison stood on her toes to kiss him softly. "But you can't turn every normal moment into a production. Sometimes special just means comfortable." Cameron looked around her small apartment, at the mismatched furniture she'd collected from thrift stores, the plants crowding the windowsill because she didn't have a balcony, the stack of bills on her kitchen counter that she kept meaning to organize. "I don't really know how to do comfortable." "Then let me teach you," Madison said, walking over to dismiss the bewildered sommelier with a generous tip and an apology. An hour later, they were sitting on her second-hand couch, sharing a pizza that had cost $12 and drinking wine that had cost $8, watching a romantic comedy that Cameron had never heard of despite it being a classic. "This is nice," Cameron admitted, settling back against the couch cushions. "Quiet. No photographers, no business associates wanting to discuss mergers, no one asking you to invest in their startup," Madison agreed, curling up beside him. "No billion-dollar decisions to make before breakfast. No one caring about your net worth or your stock portfolio." Cameron was quiet for a moment, his fingers playing absently with her hair. "Is that why you like me?" "Because I'm more than my money when I'm with you." Madison turned to study his face, struck by the vulnerability in the question. "I like you because you hired a string quartet to apologize to me in public. I like you because you listen when I talk about work like it actually matters. I like you because you eat pizza with a fork." "I do not eat pizza with a fork," Cameron protested. Madison pointed to his plate, where he had indeed cut his slice into neat, manageable pieces. "Evidence suggests otherwise. It's more civilized." "It's weird," Madison said with a grin. "But it's your kind of weird. And I'm learning that I like your kind of weird." Cameron kissed the top of her head. "Even the billboard trucks?" "Especially the billboard trucks. Although if you ever do anything like that again, I'm changing my phone number and moving to Nebraska." "Noted." They fell into comfortable silence, the movie playing in the background while Madison dozed against Cameron's shoulder. She was almost asleep when his phone started buzzing insistently. "Sorry," Cameron murmured, reaching for it. "I should probably—" His expression changed as he read the screen. "It's Derek." Madison sat up, suddenly wide awake. Derek Hartwell, Cameron's cousin and the man responsible for Creative Solutions losing their biggest client. She'd managed to avoid thinking about him for weeks, but now he was intruding on their perfect evening. "Take it," she said, moving to give Cameron space. "Madison, I don't have to—" "Yes, you do. It's family." Cameron answered the call and Madison tried not to eavesdrop, but her apartment was small and Cameron's voice carried. She caught fragments. Something about a board meeting, a vote of no confidence, lawyers. "I'll be there in an hour," Cameron said finally, ending the call with a grim expression. "Everything okay?" Madison asked, though it clearly wasn't. "Family drama. Derek's in trouble with the board over some questionable decisions. Apparently dropping long-term clients without proper cause was just the tip of the iceberg." Cameron stood, running his hands through his hair. "I need to go to an emergency meeting." "Of course," Madison said, standing to walk him to the door. "Do what you need to do." Cameron paused with his hand on the doorknob. "Madison, about Derek and what happened with your company. We don't have to talk about that now." "Yes, we do." Cameron turned to face her fully. "I need you to know that I had nothing to do with his decision to drop Creative Solutions. But I also need you to know that I might be in a position to do something about it now." Madison felt her stomach clench. "What do you mean?" If the board votes Derek out, they'll ask me to step in temporarily while they search for a new CEO. It would give me the authority to reverse some of his more impulsive decisions, including the one that cost my company 40% of our revenue, Madison said slowly. Yes. Madison stared at him, feeling like she was standing at the edge of another cliff. Cameron, no. What? No. You can't fix my career problems. You can't use your family drama as an excuse to rescue me. I'm not trying to rescue you. Yes, you are. Madison stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Me becoming a problem for you to solve, a damsel for you to save. Madison, that's not what this is. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're about to use your corporate power to fix something that happened to your girlfriend. How is that different from buying me? Cameron's face went pale. You think I would manipulate a family business crisis just to help you? I think you're used to solving problems with money and power, and you don't see the difference between helping and controlling. That's not fair, isn't it? Madison felt tears threatening and hated herself for it. Cameron, I've watched you try to turn every normal moment into something extraordinary. You can't order pizza without hiring a sommelier. You can't apologize without billboard trucks, and now you can't let me handle my own career problems without staging a corporate takeover. So what are you saying? Madison took a shaky breath. I'm saying maybe we're too different. Maybe this whole thing was a mistake. Don't say that. Cameron, look around. Madison gestured to her small apartment, then at his expensive watch, his tailored clothes, his phone that was probably worth more than her monthly rent. Look at us. Really look at us. You live in a world where problems get solved with phone calls and checkbooks. I live in a world where problems get solved with hard work and time. Those worlds don't mix. They do when people care enough to make them work. Do they? Or does one person just get absorbed into the other's world until they disappear completely? Cameron stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Is that what you think would happen? That you'd disappear? I think, Madison said carefully, that you're used to getting what you want. And I'm afraid that once you have me completely, you'll get bored and move on to the next interesting challenge. And I think, Cameron said, his voice tight with hurt, that you're so afraid of being seen as a gold digger that you'd rather push me away than take a chance on something real. They stood there in her tiny living room, the space between them feeling like an ocean. Madison could hear the neighbor's TV through the thin walls, the sound of traffic from the street below, all the ordinary sounds of her ordinary life that felt so far removed from Cameron's world of corporate crises and emergency board meetings. Maybe you're right, she said finally. Maybe I am too scared. Madison, you should go, she said, opening the door. Your family needs you. Cameron hesitated for a moment, looking like he wanted to argue, to fight for them the way he had with the billboard trucks. But this wasn't something that could be solved with grand gestures or expensive apologies. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, it is, Madison replied, even though saying it felt like cutting out her own heart. After he left, Madison sank back onto her couch, staring at the 2 wine glasses and the half-eaten pizza that represented what might have been the last normal moment they'd ever share. She'd done the right thing, the smart thing, the self-preserving thing. So why did it feel like the biggest mistake of her life? 6 weeks after their breakup, Madison was finally getting used to her new routine. Wake up at 7, check the job boards over coffee, spend the morning updating her portfolio, interview with another startup that probably couldn't afford her salary requirements, come home to her quiet apartment and pretend she wasn't thinking about Cameron Westfield. She was getting pretty good at the pretending part. Madison, you have a visitor, Janet called from the front desk, her voice carrying an odd note that made Madison look up from her computer. If it's another reporter wanting to know about my brief romance with tech royalty, tell them I've moved to Canada, Madison called back. It's not a reporter. Something in Janet's tone made Madison abandon her work and walk to the front of the office. Standing in their modest lobby, looking completely out of place in his expensive suit, was Derek Hartwell. Madison had seen his picture in business magazines, but in person, Derek looked tired and significantly less polished than his cousin. His blonde hair needed a trim. There were dark circles under his blue eyes, and his usually perfect posture had a defeated slump to it. "Ms. Brooks," Derek said, standing when he saw her. "Thank you for seeing me." "I didn't exactly have a choice," Madison replied, crossing her arms. "What do you want, mister? Do Hartwell?" Derek glanced around the small office, taking in the mismatched furniture and the air of barely controlled chaos that had been Creative Solutions' signature since losing the Hartwell account. "I wanted to apologize," he said simply. Madison blinked. "Excuse me?" "For dropping your company. It was a poor decision made for the wrong reasons, and it cost good people their jobs." "Why are you telling me this now?" Derek was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming against his briefcase. "Because 6 weeks ago the board of directors voted me out of my position as CEO of Hartwell Industries. My cousin Cameron has been running the company temporarily while they search for a permanent replacement." Madison felt something cold settle in her stomach. And one of his first acts was to review all the contracts I'd terminated in the past year. He reinstated every single one of them, except yours." "What?" Madison sank into the nearest chair, her mind racing. "When I asked him why, he said that Creative Solutions deserved the right to choose whether they wanted to work with Hartwell Industries again, given how poorly we'd treated them." Derek's smile was rueful. He said some decisions couldn't be undone with money or corporate authority. Madison stared at him, trying to process what she was hearing. Cameron could have fixed everything, and he didn't? "He respected your independence too much to make that choice for you," Derek said. "Even though it meant watching you struggle, even though it meant you probably hate him for not fixing something he easily could have fixed." "I don't hate him," Madison whispered. "No? Because from where I'm sitting it looks like two people who care about each other are making themselves miserable over pride and fear." Madison looked up sharply. "This coming from the man who fired us over a phone call? This coming from the man who spent the last 6 weeks watching his cousin, the most driven, focused person I know, completely fall apart because he's in love with someone who won't let him prove it?" Derek leaned forward in his chair. "Madison, Cameron could have overruled my decision on day one. He could have made your problems disappear with a single phone call. But he didn't because he knew you'd never forgive him for taking away your choice. So why are you here?" "Because I'm tired of watching two good people punish themselves for being afraid of the wrong things." Derek opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "This is a proposal for Creative Solutions to handle all of Hartwell Industries' marketing for our West Coast operations. It's a 3-year contract worth approximately $2.8 million. Madison's mouth fell open. "Derek, I can't." "This has nothing to do with Cameron," Derek said firmly. "I've spent the last month reviewing your company's work, talking to your former clients, looking at your campaigns. You're good at what you do, Madison. Really good. This contract is based purely on merit." "Then why didn't Cameron?" "Because Cameron would never put you in a position where you'd have to wonder if you got something because of your relationship with him." Derek stood, placing the folder on the table between them. "But I'm not dating you, I'm just a businessman who made a mistake and wants to correct it." Madison stared at the folder like it might explode. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Standard terms, competitive rates, complete creative control on your end." Derek paused. "There is one condition, though." "I knew it. You have to personally present your first campaign proposal to our board of directors." Derek's smile was almost sympathetic. "Which means you'll have to see Cameron again." Madison's heart started hammering against her ribs. "Derek." "He doesn't know I'm here," Derek said quickly. "This is my decision, my contract to offer. But Madison, that man is miserable without you. And from what I can see, you're pretty miserable without him too. It's not that simple. Isn't it?" Derek headed toward the door, then paused. "You know, Cameron told me once that you were the first person who ever told him you weren't for sale. But maybe the real question isn't whether you're for sale. Maybe it's whether you're brave enough to be priceless." After Derek left, Madison sat alone in the lobby for a long time, staring at the folder that represented everything she'd been working toward: financial security, professional recognition, the chance to build something lasting, everything she'd thought she wanted. But as she opened the folder and read through the proposal, all she could think about was Cameron choosing not to fix her problems, respecting her independence even when it meant losing her. Cameron, who could have solved everything with a phone call but didn't, because he knew it would hurt her more than help her. Cameron, who was probably sitting in some boardroom right now, making billion-dollar decisions while thinking about a woman who'd walked away from him because she was too scared to believe she could be worthy of being chosen rather than saved. "Janet," Madison called, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Yeah?" "Cancel my interviews for tomorrow. I have a presentation to prepare." "The Hartwell contract?" Madison smiled, feeling something that had been frozen inside her chest finally start to thaw. Among other things. 3 days later, Madison stood outside the imposing glass tower that housed Westfield Technologies, wearing her best suit and carrying a presentation that she'd rewritten 17 times. The lobby was everything she remembered from business magazines: soaring ceilings, modern art, the kind of understated luxury that whispered rather than shouted about money. "Madison Brooks for the Hartwell Industries board meeting," she told the receptionist, proud that her voice didn't shake. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like the longest of her life. Madison checked her reflection in the polished steel doors, smoothed her hair, and tried to remember all the reasons why this was a good idea. The boardroom was intimidating in its elegance: floor-to-ceiling windows, a table that could seat 20 people, and technology that probably cost more than most people's houses. The board members were already seated, a collection of sharp suits and sharper minds who looked like they ate small marketing companies for breakfast. And at the head of the table, looking more handsome and more tired than she remembered, sat Cameron Westfield. Their eyes met across the room, and Madison felt her carefully prepared speech evaporate from her mind. He looked surprised to see her, then wary, then something that might have been hopeful. "Ms. Brooks," Derek said, standing to greet her. "Thank you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, Madison Brooks from Creative Solutions." Madison set up her presentation with hands that trembled only slightly, acutely aware of Cameron's eyes on her. She'd practiced this dozens of times, knew every slide by heart, but somehow his presence made everything feel different. "Good morning," she began, her voice finding its strength. 6 months ago, Hartwell Industries terminated their contract with Creative Solutions. Today I'm here to show you why that was a mistake, and why working with us again would be the smartest decision you could make. For the next 20 minutes, Madison presented the campaign she'd developed, a comprehensive rebranding strategy that positioned Hartwell Industries not just as a tech company, but as a family business with roots in innovation and community. She talked about authentic storytelling, about connecting with customers on an emotional level, about the power of narrative in building lasting relationships. She was good at this, she realized. Really good. And for the first time in months, she felt like herself again, confident, capable, in control. "Questions?" she asked as her presentation ended. The board members peppered her with inquiries about budgets and timelines and market research. Madison answered each one thoroughly, professionally, aware that Cameron hadn't said a word throughout the entire presentation. "Thank you, Ms. Brooks," Derek said finally. "We'll deliberate and get back to you within the week." As the board members filed out, Madison began packing up her materials, her heart hammering as she realized she and Cameron were about to be alone in the room. "Madison?" His voice was quiet, careful. She looked up to find him standing near the windows, his hands in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. "Hi," she said, feeling suddenly shy. "That was an incredible presentation." "Thank you. Derek told me he offered you the contract. I want you to know I had nothing to do with—" "I know," Madison interrupted. He explained. Cameron nodded, but didn't come any closer. "How have you been?" "Fine," Madison lied. "Good. You?" "Terrible," Cameron said with brutal honesty. "Absolutely miserable." Madison felt her heart clench. "Cameron, I've been thinking about what you said, about me trying to solve problems with money and power, about not understanding the difference between helping and controlling. Cameron finally moved closer, stopping just on the other side of the conference table. You were right. I was scared, Madison admitted. I was so afraid of being seen as someone who was only with you for your money that I couldn't see you were trying to respect my independence. And I was so used to fixing things that I couldn't understand why you didn't want to be fixed. They stood there looking at each other across the polished table, 6 weeks of hurt and misunderstanding between them. I missed you, Madison said softly. I missed you too. Every day. Cameron, I need you to know something. Madison took a deep breath. If the board approves this contract, I want it to be because Creative Solutions earned it. Not because of our relationship, not because you influenced the decision, but because we're good enough to deserve it. You are good enough, Cameron said firmly. You're better than good enough, you're extraordinary. And if they don't approve it? Cameron's smile was soft and sure. Then we'll figure it out together, if you'll let me. Madison walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of him. I love you, she said simply. I love your weird relationship with pizza utensils, and your tendency to overthink romantic gestures, and even your stupid billboard trucks. I love that you respected me enough not to fix my problems when you easily could have. I love you too, Cameron said, reaching up to cup her face in his hands. I love that you told a billionaire you weren't for sale. I love that you'd rather struggle than compromise your principles. I love that you make me want to be worthy of you. You already are, Madison whispered. And then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and everything that had been wrong with the world suddenly felt right again. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cameron rested his forehead against hers. So what happens now? He asked. Madison smiled, feeling more sure of herself than she had in months. Now we figure out how to make this work, both of us as equals making choices together. No more grand gestures? Well, Madison said thoughtfully, maybe small grand gestures, like flowers, or normal restaurants. I can do normal restaurants. Good. Because I have some ideas about how a billionaire and a marketing assistant can build something together that's worth more than money. Cameron's smile was brilliant. I'm listening. Later, Madison said, standing on her toes to kiss him again. Right now, I just want to enjoy being priceless. As they left the boardroom together, hand in hand, Madison realized that sometimes the best things in life weren't for sale at all. They were freely given, freely chosen, and worth more than all the money in the world. The end.